Valve has released brand new details of their upcoming VR headset.
Yeah, but is this something to be excited about?
Or something you probably should pass by.
Hot take!
Now, both Adam and I have played a lot of VR headsets. Adam, you started off with the original release of Oculus Rift.
Well, the second iteration of the Oculus Rift.
Okay.
So it was the Dev Kit 2, and I really enjoyed it. That was the only VR headset that I technically owned, per se. But speaking of Valve, we're going to be talking about Valve a lot today. The experience that I enjoyed the most on there was Half-Life 2. They had Half-Life 2 working on the Dev Kit 2. That was my first experience, and I played through just about all the game, and yeah, that was the moment for me where I was like, okay, no, this is new tech, and this is exciting.
Yeah.
Really exciting.
Now, I played the original first model of the Rift, then I used HTC Vive. We've used a bunch of other VR headsets, including Labo.
What?
But the less spoken of that, the better.
Oh, no!
VR headsets have been around for a little while now,
Yeah.
and Valve announcing a new one shouldn't be that big of a deal, but they had some pretty cool pieces of tech to talk about. So first off, there are three kind of factors to this announcement. The first thing are the base stations. Now, for those of you that don't know, with the original HTC Vive set that they released, they had these base stations, which essentially are just these boxes that you put around your room that track you in your room in free space.
Yes, that's right. That's important for VR. A lot of people think that well, in VR, there's seated experiences, and there are experiences where you can walk around and interact with things, and I would say that those are far more compelling when you can walk around. So the way that the HTC Vive's base stations work is that you can kind of sort of walk around your room to tell the Vive, okay, this is the space that I'm in, and because of the base stations, that's all accessible, right?
Yeah,
and then games will scale to those specific room sizes.
So basically, the base stations that they've had on the market previously, they are basically obsolete now. You can get these brand new 2.0 base stations that apparently are better in a couple of factors, better search and stuff like that. They also give you the ability to make a much larger room trackable, where the original ones, you could do a pretty decently sized room, but I guess now if you have a warehouse, you can just use the warehouse. It's pretty crazy. They also have the ability to add a third box, which they couldn't do previously. So with that third box, you have additional tracking information if apparently you have a tricky spot in your room that...
Or your warehouse.
Yeah, your warehouse, whatever it might be.
Your barn.
This is a lot less interesting to me, this kind of inclusion of this technology, but one thing I like about this is Valve's commitment to base station technology, because where a lot of other companies are trying inside-out technology, which is essentially a bunch of sensors in the headset that track where you are, I haven't seen that done so well. There's been like a lot of headsets that have done it, but typically what they do is they track what's going on at the front and not what's going on in the back. So they can't track your hands if you were to move your hand just out of the range of where the headset can track you. And when that happens, you usually get pretty poor response and kind of gameplay problems.
Yeah, right now with the tech that we have, we need to record or be able to get as much information about the user and what you're doing as possible. So base stations seem like the best way of tracking all that stuff right now.
So Valve's commitment to that, good.
Yeah.
The next thing that they've introduced is something that I'm very excited personally about, because even if you don't have one of the new headsets, you could get these controllers, the Valve Index controllers. Now previously, these were known as the knuckle controllers, because basically what would happen is you put your hands inside of the controllers and they kind of hold your knuckle, and that way you can actually just have your hand in free space. You can grab stuff out of the air, and that's a very convincing mechanic that very few VR controllers are kind of utilizing.
Yeah, Valve really wanted to make a point of kind of segueing away from buttons. There are still buttons on these controllers, but they feel like if you really want to feel like you're part of a game or experience, you have to be able to track those things, and not only to see like positionally where your fingers would be, but like the sort of pressure that's being applied is important as well.
Yeah,
so that's being factored in.
So basically, when you move your fingers down, it knows which fingers are going down. Why this is important, and many people haven't even thought about this yet, is because with these kind of controllers, the previous one, they just registered your pressure. They didn't actually know where your fingers were. With this one, you can put your hands out and play a piano. I don't know if you have thumbs. I think you do, but there's some kind of tech there.
Well, I do. Yeah. I certainly have thumbs. Raccoons do.
I don't know if it can register your thumbs. It probably does. It doesn't matter as long as
Sonic
you got your fingers. Yeah. basically, as you can actually you can use that kind of technology to track those kind of things, you have better precision, and that way you have the ability to do a lot of interesting things in a game that typically you couldn't do. Now, there's a lot of games out there that are already developed for VR that don't make use of this, so I don't think we're going to see games that really implement this very well for the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's something that I guess we are going to dive into eventually. Is that this headset and all the factors that are included with it, they're doing a lot of things that a lot of other VR headsets aren't doing, which is exciting, but you have to keep in mind that developers are trying to develop things for multiple platforms.
Yeah.
They don't just want to develop for something that's very, very specialized, and what this headset seems to be doing is allowing for high specialization, but if there aren't other platforms that have that, it's scary. People don't want to jump into that space immediately.
And
right?
we'll definitely be talking about that more in the video.
Oh.
Now, the next thing that's important is the headset itself.
Oh, the thing that's going on your face.
Yeah.
It's been perfected with Labo VR. So Valve just said you just staple one of those to your face and you're fine.
Yeah, so that's not going to happen.
That's not it? Okay.
What you're getting is a much higher resolution screen. What's actually important about this one is Valve figured out a way to basically just break the screen off into two pieces. So each screen kind of floats around your eye at a bit of an angle, which is very unique. Very few of the headsets out there do anything like that. And each screen is, I believe, 1,440 by 1,900?
It's two 1,440 by 1,600 LCD panels. And they're, highly configurable. So you can, like you're mentioning, it's where we had issues with things like Labo VR or like Cardboard VR. There's no accessibility options. Like, you can really, like, how far do you want the lenses from your eyes? What's the width? Some people's eyes are further away from the center of their face than others and closer. So this is very configurable. That is the messaging with this, the entirety of this unit, is that it's accessible, maybe to a fault.
Yeah,
right.
Because they're offering that kind of technology as well too, where you have the ability to just move the eyes independently or whatever.
Yeah.
That also gives a really cool perspective for people, because you're going to get a better field of view with this headset than other headsets. Also, with the extension of a much higher resolution screen per eye, you can start to see a little bit less of that screen door effect. Though from some impressions that journalists had, I haven't personally used it myself, they apparently could see it a little bit, but it's not as bad as it was on the previous Vive.
Yeah, they're really trying to stamp that out. Specifically, from all the impressions that I've read, is that they've made it a lot better for text, which is so important in VR. And we've been seeing, like with Labo VR and stuff, they're trying to compensate by making text very big and stuff. But you want to be able to have text that is far off.
Yes.
And you can still read it. Sometimes you have experiences where you're in like a spaceship and stuff is going to be on your whatever you'd call it, like your
dashboard.
Your dashboard. Thank you. You want to be able to read your dashboard and stuff. There's so many games that do that. So.
Yeah. Now, what's important about this technology too is that these screens are not OLED, which a lot of people were shocked about to hear. So with OLED technology, the difference between that and LCD is OLED can have a complete perfect off state where basically you have completely very dark blacks. But with LCD technology, you don't have that, though it's not as terrible as everyone likes to make it out to be. But in VR games, the deeper the black, the better it can be for a much sharper and more dynamic image.
Now, you had said that Valve was going about this because they were trying to stray away from ghosting, right?
Yes.
Which has been a really big issue with some headsets.
So there's two things that they're doing with this. First off, the individual panels apparently has a much faster response time, so it kind of gets rid of trailing and ghosting, which can be an issue with many VR headsets. But something else that they've done, which I'm really excited about, and to be honest, the thing I'm most excited about this headset isn't all this other stuff with resolution and all that stuff, it's the frame rate. Now, first off, it's going to support 90 hertz games, and there's already plenty of games out there that support that, but it's also going to have an 120 hertz screen per eye, which means you're going to get 120 frames per second per eye, making for some amazing experiences. Plus, they've also said there's an experimental 144 hertz mode on it somehow, and you're going to be able to see even higher frame rates.
Is this the first headset that we've heard that could do 144?
There might be another one out there, but
that,
in terms of mainstream from a big company, this is, in my knowledge, the first one to come out.
What's great about this, if you're wondering about frame rates, and frame rates are always a thing with gaming, but it's more so an issue with these headsets because some people get sick. Some people have wobbly VR legs, and the quicker you can have that screen kind of updating itself.
Yes.
You know, you can cut back a little bit on the VR sickness.
Yeah,
that
this
can
might actually be
ensue.
able to really improve people's just experiences with it overall. But the better the frame rate is, the better your actual experience is going to be playing these kind of games. Something to also keep in mind too is that while you are capable of running at 120 hertz, we don't know if every game is going to be able to go that high, because there's, like we said, there's already a lot of games on the market already, and if the developers aren't updating the games anymore, they're going to be locked at 90 until time eternal unless somebody modifies the game.
Again, you can make the Rolls Royce of headsets, but if there's nothing to play on it necessarily, then what's the point? This is coming in at a premium price point. I don't think we touched on that yet. We're close to $1,000. It's $999
with everything. But then if you just want the headset alone, it's going to be about $500.
Which is a great approach from Valve. Their pricing structure allows for a lot of configuration there, and you can use your old HTC Vive base, whatever, your base boxes. You can use the controllers, and it's a completely open ecosystem, so it's very friendly for developers and people that want to play games and whatnot. We have to talk about one very interesting term that they've labeled the frunk.
Yes,
the frunk of you can take off the front sort of faceplate to the Valve Index.
Yeah, so it'll be like right up the front there, and then it's like it looks like enough gap to put in, like, I don't know, a chocolate bar or something. That's the first way I want to
put some treats in your headset.
You know, when you get hungry, you just take it off and take
playing this for too long. You can add to you can make it a 4D experience, man.
Apparently,
you're
there's
playing Sushi Striker, or Fruit Ninja.
I don't know.
You can have some watermelon.
There's apparently going to be a USB 3, or there is a USB 3.0 capable port there, and they're basically doing that so anyone can make their own devices there. First off, when I saw it, the immediate thing I thought of was the Leap Motion, right? So the Leap Motion is this device that allows you to actually track your hands in free space. So that's what it looks like. It could fit one of those. The problem is not many game developers have utilized that too much, and even though that's really good for people out there that want to modify things in the future, the reality of the situation is that most modern consumers will not be adding things onto their headset once they've purchased it. So whatever the standard is, every game developer is going to have to utilize that as the de facto standard.
Yeah, this sort of thing being included with the headset itself, really it speaks to me in that Valve seems to be leaning more towards this being a development unit, like the price point, all the configuration options, and then also this USB thing, which even them in their tech demos, all they showed off was like an LED light. It's like, look, it works. But you can do whatever you want with it. I mean, it's there. You figure it out, basically. So, this seems like something that might not be... it's not... A lot of people see these headsets and they're like, everyone's going to have them, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's not even going to be released everywhere.
Yeah. So unfortunately, this one seems to be only being released in the U.S. and Europe, not even Canada.
Right, and limited. Limited as well. So there's only going to be a specific number of them that are going to be coming out. So if you want to get your hands on one of these things, you better pre-order it pretty soon.
So... a lot of the hardware looks good, the controllers look good, the base stations look good. What are the problems that we see immediately? Well, typically when you announce a new piece of hardware, you show off games with that hardware. That didn't happen here.
Okay. So Valve has been rumored to be working on 3 VR titles. And we hear things about Valve all the time. There's like... Valve time is a thing. Because...
Oh, yes. I've been living Valve time.
Yeah, exactly. Because projects are announced. Sometimes they don't come out. Sometimes they come out a year later. Sometimes whatever. They very rarely hit the mark with what they announce. There's been rumors about 3 huge software titles being released by Valve, worked on and will be released for VR. But there's one that they, at this press junket or whatever, they said will be coming out before the end of 2019. And it's supposed to be a very big software title. Will it be a killer app for this thing? I have no idea. I want to see what it is. Valve only works on MOBAs now, in my mind, and card games, and they just work on making Steam's cogs continue to spin.
It's to me, it's insane that they wouldn't have just a simple demo of whatever their game is to show off. Because look, I get that there was a press junket where they're showing this stuff off, but there was barely any footage on their main website. They don't show anything of these games. The idea is that to get people excited about hardware, you you have to show what that hardware is capable of.
Yeah.
So when you show off nothing, it sends the idea out there that you don't know what people are going to do on this thing. They did announce that there's going to be some games that are going to support this hardware uniquely. So we've got Accounting Plus, Boneworks, a VR demo a lot of people are excited about because it kind of looks like
the first thing from the demo that we saw was the antagonist grabs a crowbar. If that's not messaging in some way, I don't know what is.
It's got that look to it. No Man's Sky, Vacation Simulator, Job Simulator. There's also going to be Rec Room, which is a free game that anyone can download at any point. It's really good. Yeah. Space Pirate Trainer and Super Hot VR, which is one of my most important games on the platform, period.
Shane, if only Valve had access to some IPs that people cared about.
Yeah.
You know, if they had games that people wanted to see sequels to, then like, you know, they might be able to use it for VR.
I would have even taken like their VR studio, like they had that VR experience game, right? I would have taken a part 2 to that.
Well,
right?
okay. Maybe this will be great news for you then. Well, I was looking into it, and they are releasing another sort of Portal-esque demo that's supposed to be showing off more of the functionality of the controllers. But to me, that doesn't sound too exciting.
It doesn't sound as exciting as it could be. Like it's a neat idea, but we need more. The idea of VR has already been well established by several other companies, and what Valve is doing now is introducing hardware for a market that doesn't really need better hardware. They need cheaper hardware, and they need more games. And that's where they're at right now.
Like I said, this seems like something that's more for either like huge VR enthusiasts or for developers. And yeah, it's not like a PSVR unit where, oh, everyone needs to go out and get it. Here's the killer app that's going to be coming out for it. No, we don't know anything about that.
And see, that's my problem too. Now, there are a lot of factors about VR that might actually cause problems with this headset being a success. One of the big ones, not having software, like a killer app that people need to go out and buy, is massive, because all of the games that we've just talked about, Accounting Plus, all that, that's all playable outside of this headset without these new controllers. Here is a big problem that I don't think Valve has established yet because they haven't actually made the software to warrant this hardware. Initially, when these games come out, and when they already did come out in the past, let's use Vacation Simulator or Job Simulator as an example. Job Simulator is one of the oldest VR games. It was out for a very long time, and a lot of people tend to think of that as one of the most interesting ways to get into VR at the very first thing of things, right?
Yeah, I think it's great.
What was your experience with it?
Oh, like as far as a like sort of tech demo to show off what VR is, especially for someone that doesn't have VR legs yet, it's perfect.
Yeah.
You're standing in one spot, and you do a bunch of cool things. You can eat little donuts and drink things and toss things around.
Sure.
When you're finished with that experience, you never play it again.
That's true.
Right? It's something that you show your dad that you're like, this is what VR is going to be. Isn't it great? And then it's like a showpiece.
And that right there is the problem. The games they've been showing off are really cool showpieces, although some of them I think are better than others. The problem was they were already designed with older controls in mind. So if you want that experience, you can have it with much, much cheaper hardware. This is the problem with introducing new controllers and stuff. You're going to have this gap where people don't know how to utilize those controllers, or game developers can't make use of them exclusively because they have to figure out that there's a bunch of other people out there that need to be able to play my game, so I can't release it on this one specific piece of hardware that's limited right now to 2 regions in smaller numbers.
Yeah, exactly. I'm calling it. This is going to be mostly a development unit. And like, it's sad to say, but I see this kind of going the way as so many of Valve's other sort of hardware, you know, projects. Yeah, the Steam box, those things never took off. We had the Valve controller, which was interesting. It wasn't a perfect device, but
it wasn't.
Yeah, it was doing some cool things. Like, we're seeing cool new tech being added to this new headset. But if we don't have some sort of a like blanket tech that can be used like tech that can be used with the same software.
Yeah.
Right? Developers are not going to jump on board.
The best way to explain why the Steam controller didn't do so well is essentially the Steam controller was trying to be the master of 2 things. They wanted to give you the ability to play PC games sitting on your couch and playing console games sitting in front of your desk. Like, it was this idea that it could do both things at the same time. The problem was it did neither good.
Yeah.
So a lot of people out there that wanted to play a PC game sitting on their couch, most games already have controller support that want you to have that experience, and the games that needed mouse and keyboard didn't play as well on that controller as they probably should have.
And I would say as well, like that tech, the controller tech, relied heavily on the audience to make the configurations, the button mapping and stuff. It was mostly done from the fans.
Yes.
It's through Steam. It kind of feels like that's the direction they're going with the Index as well.
Yeah.
It's like, here's everything. It does all these great things. Go do it, especially when it comes to the frunk.
Yes.
You don't know what the frunk's for other than watermelon storage and LED lights, apparently.
If anyone's going to be making any games whatsoever for VR right now, they have to be focusing on the VR platform that has the largest install base. Adam, what would that be?
That would be the PSVR.
PSVR.
The PSVR
Labo,
sold.
seriously?
Well, I tried. The PSVR sold about 4 million units right now, which seems like a drop in the bucket, but it's pretty impressive for a tech that not a lot of people...
Drop in the bucket, but if you're thirsty, that's where you go, not the desert, okay?
Exactly.
There's a lot more people there. So if you're going to be making games, they're likely going to be making games with that platform in mind.
Right.
So here's how that works. You have to consider that anyone that possibly could have a PlayStation VR headset likely has the headset and a regular DualShock controller. That's what they have to do. If they look at the other marketplaces with a bunch of different weird controllers,
tracking your fingers and frunks.
They just can't support it. They really can't, because they don't know how many gamers are out there.
Sure.
And that really is the problem that Valve is in right now. They're making something and not providing software to entice people to get that hardware. But the cost of it is also incredibly restrictive.
Absolutely, yeah. Like, they do have the configuration options for whatever you want to buy, right? If you just want to buy the headset's a little cheaper. If you want to buy the headset and this, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But it's still, it is a premium price point. Now, it's not the most expensive headset out there on the market right now.
It's not.
But we're in a world where, like, we have new, like, Vive units coming out from time to time. We have the Oculus Quest there's pre-orders up for that now,
and it's that $399. Plus, once you buy that headset, you don't need to have anything else with it. It's all built into the headset with the controllers.
Labo, PSVR, you got your Samsung stuff. The VR is everyone's throwing things at the wall right now, and the only thing that's kind of sticking is the PSVR. So if you want to develop for a platform, that's the platform that you're going to try to develop.
And here's the thing about the PlayStation VR and why I believe that's going to still have the most success moving forward. Sony made just drew their line in the sand by saying, look, PlayStation VR is going to work on PlayStation 5. We're moving that tech over. Regardless if they're going to introduce newer headsets or whatever, they've established that this isn't ending here. We're taking that and moving it. And that's a big deal. Most people don't even think about that, but like if they actually introduce newer VR headsets with the next line of hardware, Sony's going to be in a position that's going to be almost unchallengeable by anyone else. The Oculus Quest is coming out at $399, which is a pretty dang good price for what it's at, and it comes in a lot cheaper than what you could possibly get a certain consoles for. However, the PlayStation 4 has an install base of close to 100 million users. Of course, if even they get a fraction of that audience getting PSVR headsets, that means that those people that already have those PlayStation that PlayStation hardware can likely get the PSVR cheaper than actually getting Oculus Quest. So the price gambit there is actually not as exciting as it could be.
And I would say that Sony seems to be supporting the PSVR very aggressively.
Yes, they are.
Even though Oculus has been in the game for a very, very long time, a PlayStation, we're seeing time and time again, oh, this is playable in VR, and this is playable in VR. If they move into the next gen of consoles and they have another iteration of their VR headset, and it's not the Index route where you have a frunk and you have your weird controls and stuff. No, the screen looks better. It's very much, maybe the controls are slightly better, but the tech is very much in the same line. Moving forward, I could see a lot of developers developing specifically with the PSVR in mind.
I believe that what Valve needed to do with the Index was introduce a piece of hardware that came in at a bit of a cheaper price that was easy for consumers to get. But I think you're right. This looks like it's more focused on developers, but then I don't know what they're aiming. Like if it's enthusiasts I get, but for developers, like who are they developing their games for with this headset in mind? Like they're not going to find an audience there because that audience simply doesn't exist. They're working kind of backwards to make games on here, and I think it's the complete wrong choice. There's a lot of people talking about Boneworks being this really exciting experience, but if Boneworks requires some of this hardware to really work that well, it's not going to do well. More people own VR headsets in the PlayStation VR realm. So if Boneworks doesn't come out on PlayStation VR, and I don't think it would because the game clearly doesn't look like it's going to work on that platform, then the game is not going to be as successful as people would hope.
You know what would make me invest in this is like the same time that I kind of got out of consoles for a little while. And I remember looking at the Xbox 360, and I was never like into Xbox per se, but I remember at one point in time, the Xbox 360 had 3 what I would consider like killer apps. One was BioShock, one was Mass Effect, and I think the other was one of the Elder Scrolls games, right? All I need is 3 really great looking games that seem like long form experiences that I'll go back to. That'll have me. That will usually make me like commit to a platform. So if it wasn't just one game being released before the end of 2019, but it's like, oh no, we have these other titles as well. If only Valve had multiple IP, which they could make work in VR. But that's just me. That's me personally. I would need about 3 pieces of software. Even at the $1,000 price point, I might make the leap at that point.
My theory on how this is going to work is that Valve might introduce what I like to call double dipping games, which I hate. Double dipping games are games that basically are a game that exists in non-VR and they bring it over to VR with minimal execution.
Oh no.
And see, that's the instance when the game can be played outside of VR, so why would you bother playing it in VR? What was the experience worthwhile?
Yeah.
So I have a theory that because they already know the install base of HTC Vive and those people like Portal because they have those little VR experiences there, they might introduce a Portal 3. And if they do that, then they're going to be introducing a game that, unfortunately, is likely going to have to be played outside of VR, so the reason to get VR just to play that is heavily minimized. There is this theory out there right now that Resident Evil 7 really grabbed a lot of people on PlayStation VR because it was capable of being played in both. But I believe more people played that game outside of VR, and the people that did play it in VR likely didn't have the most engaging experience. The game isn't really a VR game, it's just a VR minimized experience because all you're doing is looking around with your headset. The rest of the game is still played the same way you would play it traditionally outside of VR.
Yeah, we don't have the numbers on who has the VR headset and who was playing Resident Evil specifically in VR per se. We know it sold a lot because Resident Evil 7 was great. It reviewed very well. It doesn't necessarily mean that the VR was what made those sales so fantastic.
And I think that's what Valve's dealing with right now. They basically have to introduce a lot more software from their own internal house that once upon a time in a long lost distant galaxy made video games.
Before like 2004 or so, 2005?
I mean, look, I get that they make money with Steam, and I get that they still make money with some of their older titles they release, but it's about time they start releasing games again. It's getting to the point where it's just sad. Like, they're a game development house. This is what they do. Yeah. It doesn't, like, there's this concept out there about companies that release a whole bunch of hardware and software, and they don't find a lot of success with that, but they do one thing that makes a lot of money so they can just burn money in other instances. And yeah, you can burn money making a VR headset, but at the end of the day, people are not going to buy into VR, and people are not going to get Steam unless you've got software on those platforms that are worthwhile picking those things up for.
Absolutely. So if we can't do Portal, if we feel like that we're segmenting a market, hey, Valve, do a new thing.
Yeah.
You've done many things very well. Just do another one. Do a new one. One that you can only play in VR. And people are like, oh, well, I'd be stupid not to get VR because everyone's really enjoying this.
Look, right now, Microsoft is going left and right, buying a whole bunch of developers to make exclusive games on the next Xbox platform. We know that Nintendo is attempting to work hard making their next games, and we know that Sony is working with their first-party publishers. Valve, go out and buy really good VR game developers. Just think about that. Just think. There are people out there making amazing games, like the Boneworks folks. Buy them. Buy them. Make that an exclusive on your next platform. Go out and buy all the VR developers that are making amazing games and have them make games directly for Steam with your new headset. Remember, once upon a time, you hired these weird guys that were making this crazy game in their basement called Counter-Strike? You hired them. You hired the people that did Portal. Yeah, you hired the people that did Day of Defeat, even Team Fortress. I mean, they went out and got all these people that were making exciting games, and you built upon them and made better processes and better and gave them like the resources to make their dreams a reality. VR is that space. It's a new, exciting place, and you can definitely work with these developers a lot more. I hope to see that happen, but folks, what do you think? Are you excited about this new headset, or are you going to let it pass by?